Tim, thank you so much. Governor Roy Cooper joins us now in studio. Governor, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Glad to be here, Ruben, as always.
So let me start. News of the day, news of the week, if you will. I imagine you watched the State of the Union address. What were your thoughts?
I thought the president was energetic. I think he was positive and bipartisan. I mean, when you think about what has happened over the last 2 years, generational funding has been granted to the states across this country to connect people to high-speed internet, to help people with child care, to put cap on drug prices, to usher us into the clean energy future, to repair water systems and to rebuild roads and bridges and public transportation. It goes on and on and on. And talking about that, and hearing him recite all of the things that have been done was just really exciting.
There was a call for bipartisanship from the governor, or excuse me, from the president, and it's going to have to happen if anything's going to get done in Congress with a divided Congress. Do you realistically think there's anything significant that Congress is going to pass these next 2 years?
Well, you hope so, but as I've told the president that, he got a lot accomplished in the first 2 years, and I'd tell him to work a lot harder on it if he were just coming into the presidency. But for the amount of money that we need to invest across the country, he needs to spend a lot of time, and his administration needs to spend a lot of time making sure it's done the right way, that governors and state legislatures actually use this money to connect people and to build the new roads and bridges and make sure that this money gets invested properly. It's going to be a big job ahead. So, what I'm hoping is that they'll spend more time doing that. I think, I'm here this week for the National Governors Association. Divided government is going to be a topic that we're going to discuss. We obviously have it in North Carolina. It's that way in a number of states now. We have it in our country. I think people expect us to try and work together for progress and for good things for American families.
I mean, it's divided in North Carolina, and yet you've been able to bring in a lot of job announcements this past year. One of the big focuses is clean energy. I know there was an announcement just this week for an electric vehicle charging station in Durham County. Why are these companies choosing North Carolina, do you think?
We've been very intentional about recruiting companies that want to be in the clean energy arena. This is where the market is going. It's where the private market is going. North Carolina has decided to get ahead of it in order to put more money in people's pockets. Yes, we need to fight climate change, and it's certainly a priority of mine, but a lot of my colleagues across the aisle, that's not a big deal for them. What is a big deal for all of us is the high-paying jobs that the clean energy economy is bringing to our state. Why? A lot of people try to take credit for this. The credit belongs to the working people of North Carolina. We got the best workforce in the nation, particularly in the area of advanced manufacturing. And when you think about the best community college system in the country, the best array of public and private universities in the country, more four-year HBCUs than any state in the country, businesses are naturally attracted. We got to, though, make sure we keep these investments up to make sure that we have the education and training for this workforce.
Well, you saw legislation passed federally in Congress. I mean, the bipartisan infrastructure law, you had the CHIPS legislation. The jobs are starting to show up, but Americans are saying in polls that they're not seeing the results yet. They're not seeing a strong economy. They're anxious about it. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think a lot of families are still struggling. A lot of families are looking for quality child care for their children. They're concerned that their child might not have a bus driver picking them up in the morning and whether there's a teacher for them in the classroom. They're still concerned about rising prices. A number of families are struggling with health care. So there are a lot of families that are struggling with basic needs. We need to make sure we address those needs so that they can then go out and get these great paying jobs that we're attracting to our state. We've got to expand Medicaid. We've got, instead of cutting more taxes to the wealthy, we've got to invest in education from cradle to career. And if we do these things, get people health care, help them with quality child care, make sure they got health care coverage, then I think they will begin to see a lot of the progress that's being made, because they're going to have a better paying job, put more money in their family's pocket.
In many ways, the economy, though, is running on borrowed time with this failure or choice not to raise the debt limit right now. The Bipartisan Governors Association released a statement this week, said that this should be done as soon as possible, but also Congress and the administration should consider long-term reforms. So do you think the president should be willing to negotiate with Republicans right now to make those changes?
We've got to raise the debt ceiling because the United States of America needs to pay its debts. If you use a credit card, you got to pay the debt, and right now that's all we're talking about. So that really can't be negotiated. I do believe that the national debt is an issue that we need to address. Under the previous administration with President Trump, the Republicans really weren't worried about the national debt. In fact, it skyrocketed during those 4 years. Now all of a sudden they are. That's fine. Yeah, we need to talk about that. But American families, and certainly North Carolina families, are more worried about health care and educating their kids, and taking care of their parents and grandparents, and making sure we've got mental health. They want us to pay attention to those things.
So don't look at negotiating now. Raise it, then negotiate.
You got it. You have to. I mean, you cannot. Under no scenario can we not pay our debts. That would be catastrophic for our economies and for our families. It's been done in the past by Republican and Democratic members of Congress alike. You got to raise the debt ceiling here.
You're coming off your term as chair of the Democratic Governors Association. It didn't get a lot of attention, but Democrats did pretty well in 2022, winning in a number of not only blue states but swing states. Wisconsin, Kansas, which is not a swing state, that's a solidly red state. I hear about you from people a lot. They say, how is Governor Cooper able to win when statewide Democrats, a lot of them can't win? So I wonder, what's your message to these Democratic candidates that are running in swing states?
Show that you're competent. Show that you care about leadership and getting things done for people. That's what we were able to do with Democratic governors across the country in a year that traditionally and historically goes south for the president's party. Usually after a president's been elected, after that first 2 years, that first midterm, is historically bad for the president. We actually picked up net +2 Democratic governors across the country, which was a tremendous victory, and won swing states like Arizona and Michigan and Wisconsin that are so important when you're thinking about the 2024 election. But I think people look at governors as people who can get a job done and can make life better for their families. And that's what I do as governor, and work hard to represent everybody, be a governor for everybody.
So has Attorney General Josh Stein figured out that formula of how to win statewide?
Well, he has been an extraordinary Attorney General. He worked with me when I was Attorney General for years. He has a bright future in this state, so we'll just have to see. He knows a lot, I'll tell you that. He's a fine public servant.
I mean, look, you're almost 2 years out, but do you think you'll endorse before the Democratic primary?
I probably will at some point, but I've got 2 years to be governor. And these campaigns are starting earlier and earlier. There's a lot that needs to be done, and that's where I'm going to have my concentration right now.
What do you think the biggest hurdle has been for Democrats statewide in North Carolina?
Well, we are in a purple state. I mean, you look at the last election. We were able to pick up congressional seats. It's now 7-7. We were able to stave off a supermajority in the state house in a year that historically is supposed to be bad for the president's party. But we know that there's a lot more work to do. For example, the national party and the national organizations made it a more than $50 million spending gap between Ted Budd and Sherry Beasley. It's hard when you're $50 million in the hole to win an election. So I think what you're going to see is Democrats look to revitalize and work at the grassroots level. We know this next presidential election is going to be critical in 2024, and the party will get ready to do that. And but right now, we got to concentrate on governing and legislature's in session. We're going to try to make some progress to get Medicaid expanded, and I'm hoping we can get that done soon.
Obviously, there's a push to do that in the state level. There's a push to do it federally, too, if North Carolina legislature can't do it. But it's going to be a lot harder in D.C.
It's going to be a lot harder now considering the makeup of Congress, and that's why it's even more important for the North Carolina legislature to step up. And it's a little frustrating now when everybody agrees that we ought to do this. It's costing North Carolina $521 million a month. Every month that we don't expand Medicaid, we've lost that much money. And there's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars that we can invest in mental health, and everybody agrees that we need significant resources there. When you have the North Carolina Sheriff's Association, they're coming up here and telling legislators expand Medicaid because we as law enforcement officers don't need to be looking after mental health patients, you know it's time to do it. Now it's just a question of when they're going to do it and how they're going to do it, and we need to decide quickly because we're losing money and we're losing lives, unfortunately.
Let me end by asking you, since we're in Washington, about President Joe Biden and his State of the Union address. He got high marks for his address last night, but he still continues to struggle in the polls. Do you think he's made a clear argument to Americans that he should be elected if he chooses to run for a second term?
I believe so, and so many times people have tried to count Joe Biden out, and so many times he has proved them wrong. And when you look at the success that he was able to generate during the first 2 years in office, he's got plenty of time to make that case. And as we all know, the only poll that counts is Election Day.
Like to see him run again?
Well, he's going to, and I've told him I support him.
Governor, appreciate you coming in. Please come back.
Thank you, Ruben. I appreciate it.
Tim, we'll send it back to you in Raleigh.